The studio lights were already hot, but the air felt heavier than usual. The audience shifted in their seats, camera operators hesitated for half a second too long before locking into position. This wasn't the normal energy of a daytime talk show. It felt tight, controlled, like everyone sensed something was off but didn't know why yet. Then, Oprah stepped out from behind the curtain, and the temperature in the room changed instantly. There was no warm wave, no easy smile, no playful greeting. She walked straight toward the table with steady steps, shoulders squared, eyes forward, calm but not relaxed, focused but not friendly. It wasn't the Oprah people expected. It was the Oprah who looked like she came with a purpose. The applause started on instinct, but it didn't rise. It faded, early, uneven, confused. The audience felt the mismatch right away. This wasn't a promo visit. This wasn't a friendly chat. This felt like the start of something nobody rehearsed for. Whoopi noticed it first. You could see it on her face before anyone else reacted. Her smile froze for just a second too long. Her hand tightened around the cards in front of her. She'd been on live TV for decades. She knew energy. She knew when a guest came in relaxed and when a guest came in loaded. And Oprah wasn't just loaded, she was controlled. That's what made it dangerous. The other panelists kept smiling, kept throwing out practiced greetings, trying to keep the rhythm alive, but the rhythm was already slipping. Behind the cameras, things started shifting fast. A director whispered into a headset, calling for tighter angles. Wide shots suddenly felt risky. You don't pull in close unless you expect something to break. One camera swung lower, another adjusted framing to stay locked on Oprah's face. Producers didn't say it out loud, but their movements gave it away. They were preparing for impact. The show wasn't even officially underway, and the control room was already bracing. When Oprah reached the table, she didn't wait for help with her microphone. She reached up and adjusted it herself. A small move, almost invisible, but in television, that's a power move. It meant she wasn't there to be guided. She wasn't there to be managed. She was setting her own voice before anyone else could. Whoopi clocked it, so did the audience, even if they couldn't explain why it felt important. Something about that moment said, this conversation isn't going to be steered the usual way. The applause finally died out completely. No transition music, no smooth handoff, just a quiet, uncomfortable pause. Oprah took her seat slowly, crossed her legs, and looked straight ahead. The audience waited for a smile that never came. People started leaning forward without realizing it. You could feel the shift in posture across the room. This wasn't curiosity anymore. It was tension, the kind that tells you a collision is coming. By the time Whoopi opened her mouth to welcome her, the room already knew the truth. This wasn't going to be a friendly segment. This wasn't going to be controlled. This was a confrontation walking in slow motion, and everyone in that studio could feel it building before a single real word had even been spoken. The conversation started the way it always does. Polite smiles, light jokes, safe questions meant to keep things comfortable and moving. Whoopi leaned into her familiar hosting rhythm, framing the moment as a conversation, a dialogue, something open and friendly. Oprah answered calmly, but her responses were short, clean, almost clipped. She didn't add extra warmth. She didn't build on the small talk. Each sentence landed and stopped. It felt less like chatting and more like someone checking boxes before getting to the real point. The audience tried to follow the script, a few polite laughs, a couple of scattered claps when they were supposed to react, but the energy wasn't lining up anymore. You could hear it thinning out. The laughs didn't echo. The applause didn't carry. People were starting to sense that the room was waiting for something else. Oprah sat still, hands resting calmly, eyes steady on Whoopi. Then Whoopi wrapped up her intro with one of her usual safe framing lines about perspective, debate, and the importance of different voices. She smiled at Oprah, inviting her in. Oprah didn't respond right away. She took a slow breath, not dramatic, not rushed, just long enough for the silence to become noticeable. Cameras stayed tight. No one wanted to cut away. When she finally spoke, her tone was calm, almost gentle, but heavier than anything that came before. She thanked Whoopi for the platform, thanked the show for the invitation. Then she shifted. She said she didn't come just to promote anything. She came because when you sit in front of millions of people every day, words don't just entertain, they shape how people think, who gets empathy and who gets judged. That's when the air changed again.
One of the panelists tried to jump in, offering a soft redirect about healthy discussion and different opinions. Oprah raised her hand slightly, not aggressive, not dramatic, just enough to stop the interruption cold. The movement was small, but it carried weight. The panelist froze mid-sentence. Oprah kept speaking. She talked about responsibility, about influence, about how easy it is to hide behind format and routine while real people carry the impact at home. You could see Whoopi's posture shift, her shoulders pulled back, her expression tightened. In the control room, things started getting messy. A producer waved urgently, whispering into a headset. Another one leaned forward, eyes locked on the monitor. They weren't planning for a commercial break yet, but their hands hovered near the controls. The audience stopped clapping altogether now. No reaction cues, no filler noise, just quiet attention. People leaned forward in their seats. Some crossed their arms. Some held their breath without realizing it. What started as a polite segment had turned into a countdown. Oprah wasn't raising her voice, she wasn't attacking, but every word felt deliberate, like she was stepping closer to something she didn't come to avoid, and everyone in that room could feel it building. The friendly layer was gone, the real conversation had finally walked into the open. Oprah leaned forward slightly, not in an aggressive way, but enough to signal that the tone had changed. Her eyes moved across the panel, then back to Whoopi. "This table," she said calmly, "decides who gets patience and who gets judged." The word table didn't sound symbolic anymore, it sounded literal. The audience reacted with a low murmur, like a ripple passing through water. Everyone understood what she meant. This wasn't about one comment, it was about patterns, about who gets grace when they stumble and who gets dragged when they don't fit the room. Whoopi immediately shifted into defense mode. She straightened in her chair and leaned on something familiar: debate culture, free speech, open conversation. She reminded Oprah that this show was built on disagreement and strong opinions. Her voice carried confidence, but there was a tightness underneath. Now Oprah nodded once, acknowledging the point, then calmly pushed past it. She talked about moments that weren't named but didn't need to be. Episodes where conversations turned sharp instead of thoughtful, where pain was brushed aside for the sake of momentum, where uncomfortable stories were rushed through like speed bumps instead of treated like real lives. As Oprah spoke, the cameras did what cameras always do in tense moments. They cut to faces, a panelist blinking too fast, another pressing her lips together, a forced nod that didn't quite land. In real time, the audience could already imagine the clips that would come later: freeze frames, slow-motion replays, tone breakdowns, analysts pointing out body language. This wasn't just a conversation anymore, it was evidence stacking up in public. Whoopi shook her head. "You don't get to come in here and act like you're above us," she said, frustration breaking through her control. The audience reacted immediately. Audible gasps. Someone in the audience sucked in air sharply. Oprah didn't raise her voice. She leaned back slightly and answered calmly, "I don't sit above you. I sit with the audience." Whoopi shook her head, visibly upset. Her voice cracked just a little when she tried to respond. She reached for her microphone and adjusted it, hands shaking more than she probably wanted anyone to notice. The small movement made everything feel more real, less performative, more raw. "This is supposed to be a conversation, not a public takedown," she said. Oprah didn't interrupt. She waited until Whoopi finished, then spoke slowly, deliberately. "They call it moving on," Oprah said. "They call it being talked over." The words hit harder than shouting ever could. The audience reacted loudly now. Gasps, low murmurs, a few claps that rose and fell quickly, like people weren't sure how to release what they were feeling. Whoopi opened her mouth to fire back, but the words didn't come clean. She tried again, then stopped. Her face tightened. The rhythm she normally controlled was gone. For the first time, Whoopi didn't have a sharp comeback ready. The room felt unbalanced. Oprah sat still, composed, eyes steady on Whoopi. She didn't press anymore. She didn't need to. The shift had already happened. The power wasn't in who spoke louder. It was in who the room was listening to now, and it wasn't Whoopi. No one spoke. Not Oprah, not Whoopi, not the panel. The silence stretched long enough to stop feeling awkward and start feeling heavy, the kind of silence that fills your chest and makes you aware of your own breathing. The cameras slowly pulled back, widening the shot, not to escape the tension, but to show it. 5 women sitting at a table, frozen. No applause cue, no transition music, just the quiet hum of studio lights and the low mechanical buzz of cameras still rolling. Inside the control room, everything stalled. Producers stopped signaling. No one counted down for a commercial break. A director hovered over the switcher, unsure whether cutting away would make things worse. You could almost feel the hesitation traveling through the building. This wasn't a technical problem. This was a human one. They were watching the power dynamic shift in real time, and nobody wanted to be the person who interrupted it. Out in the audience, phones started rising quietly, not all at once. One screen, then another, then a row of glowing rectangles recording what they knew would become history online. People weren't cheering, they weren't booing, they were documenting, capturing the moment when the room stopped performing and started revealing itself. A woman in the front row whispered, "This is unreal," barely loud enough to hear, but loud enough to be felt. At the table, the hosts barely moved. Hands rested stiffly near coffee mugs. Note cards lay untouched. One panelist stared down at the desk like it might offer instructions. Another blinked slowly, fighting emotion. Whoopi sat still,